Hello guys. Today I got a very special video today, but I want to place emphasis on this video, just like how I placed on the categories notes that I did. Is that because of this, these series or notes they go pretty much a lot in depth, right? Well, I'm not just gonna tell you stuff, but I will define stuff for you, and I'll try my best to explain it to you. So, De Ente Et Essentia, On Being in Essence by St. Thomas Aquinas, Chapter 1. So let's begin with the notes. Okay, so you need to know that in the first chapter, Aquinas begins by distinguishing two senses of the word being or existence. So, which is found in Aristotle's Metaphysics 5.7. And so the senses of being, one being as that which is divided into the 10 categories, and being as this, which is the second sense, is what signifies the truth of propositions or exists as a logical subject. Okay, so the first sense of being refers to an ontological being, meaning that which exists in reality, like actually exists. And so Aristotle's system of classification divides all beings into 10 categories, which are the fundamental ways in which reality is going to be structured. And I talked about these 10 categories and how specific categories like qualities, quantities, have distinctions. For example, um, some things can be said to be quantities only in a secondary sense, right? Okay. And so, now note that in the first sense, nothing can be called a being unless it actually posits something in reality. For example, a tree, a cat, or a book. And these are beings because they actually exist in the world, okay? Now, the second sense of being, as I have said, is logical existence, or the subject of a logical sentence. So, this sense of being um, is it's basically anything that can be the subject of an affirmative proposition. In this sense, a thing does not have to exist in reality to be called a being. For example, blindness in the eye. Blindness is not a thing that exists in of itself, but it's called being because it can be affirmed in a proposition or a sentence. And so, neither affirmation or negation exists as independent things of their own, but we can still speak of them as if they do because they still exist or they still have some logical existence. So this includes negations, privations, and logical concepts. Now, this is where it gets a bit crucial because Aquinas says essence is not taken from being in the second sense because in this sense, certain things are considered beings even though they have no essence. Consider the example evil. Evil is just a privation or lack of good, and it has no real essence. Essence is the what it was to be that thing. It is whatness, but essence is also through which a thing has its existence in and through it, right? And evil only exists as the absence of something. And Aquinas actually says that essence is derived only from being in the first sense because being in the first sense, ontological existence, signifies what truly exists in reality. And so remember, Aquinas cites Aristotle, and you know this by when he says the philosopher states. And I can tell you instantly, you probably can't hear my snap because I can't snap really that well. When he says the philosopher states, he is referring to Aristotle because that's how profound Aristotle was. And Aquinas uses Averroes and addresses him as the commentator. And he also addresses Ibn Sina or Avicenna. And so when we speak of a thing's essence, we are referring to the way in which it truly exists and not merely the way it is described in a logical sentence or proposition. Now, since Aquinas established that we only speak of things having essence if they exist in the first sense, the essence of a thing is what places it into its proper category, genus, and species. So, what is essence again? Remember, essence is the what it was to be that thing, but Aquinas says essence is what is common to all members of a given category. It is that which allows beings to even be classified into their respective species and genera. For example, humanity is the essence of man, right? It is what all humans share in common and allows them to be grouped under the species man within the genus animal. And so Aristotle also defines essence as the what it was to be that thing, and since essence defines what a thing is, it's going to determine its genus and species. So some examples include a dog, and it belongs to the genus animal, and its species is the Canis lupus family, and a human belongs to the genus animal, and its species is the Homo sapien family, but it is distinguished from a dog because a human's essence is not like a dog's because it's specificated because humans are rational but dogs are not. So essence, or basically rationality, is the differentiator between a human and a dog. Okay, and so essence is very important because it's going to allow us to classify and categorize things. Now remember that a thing is placed into its proper genus or species through what its definition tells us or signifies, because again it tells us what a thing is. And so why is this even significant is because philosophers introduced the term quiddity, and I believe quiddity comes from the Latin word quidditas to mean the same thing as essence. It's whatness. It's the whatness of a thing, right? And the definition of a thing expresses its essential nature, like the definition of a human being as a rational animal signifies the essence of humanity. So since classification of genera and species depends on essence, knowing the essence of a thing allows us to understand its nature. And so essence can also be called form, and Aquinas cites Avicenna in Metaphysics 1.6 to support this idea, where he says that the certitude of everything is going to be signified through its form. So what does this even mean? It means that form is tied very, very closely with essence, because form is what makes a thing knowable. And if you don't know what form is what gives structure and actuality to a thing. In Aristotelian philosophy, potential is usually associated with matter and form. Um, I mean, sorry. Potentiality is usually associated with matter, and form is associated with actuality. Form is going to be imposing structure on matter, right? And so that's basically how Aristotle works his holomorphism, that composite substances are really substances are composite of form and matter. And so a statue, for example, has bronze as its matter, but its form is what makes it a statue of a particular shape, just like a human's form is its rational soul. Now, essence can also be called nature in some sense, because Boethius in De Persona et Duabus Naturis 1 says nature is what we call everything that can in any way be captured by the intellect. So, in one of the four senses of nature distinguished by Boethius is that which is intelligible. So, I want you to very importantly note that since a thing is not intelligible, except through its definition and essence, this sense of nature is equivalent to essence. So, again, remember that essence, form, nature, and quiddity, they really essentially mean the same thing. They're just different aspects of looking at something, okay? Okay, and so Aquinas just goes on to cite Aristotle as well, where in Aristotle's Metaphysics 5.4, Aristotle says that every substance is nature. But nature in this sense means seems to signify the essence of a thing, as it is ordered to the proper operation of the thing. And so, for example, the nature of a human being is to act rationally, right? And so essence is the whatness of a thing or quiddity, or the what it was to be that thing, and nature is essence in relation to function. For example, the nature of a human being is to act rationally. So what does this mean? Or what does this imply? Every entity acts according to its nature. A bird flies because its essence includes being a flying creature. No thing is without its proper operation. Now, even though all these terms are very, very closely related, we do have to kind of distinguish them. So remember, quiddity is the whatness of a thing. Essence is that through which a thing has being or existence. It is the principle of existence for a given kind of thing. Form is that which makes a thing knowable and determines its structure. It imposes a structure on potentiality or matter. And nature is essence as order toward the proper operation of a thing, so it's basically its function. But quiddity is called essence because being has existence through it and in it. So essence is really just the cause, or kind of like the blueprint and source that allows a thing to exist as that specific thing. This means basically that a thing exists as what it is only because of its essence. Essence is the principle of being for each particular kind of thing. I'll give you a good example, a cute dog. Okay, and so this is my dog. Her name is Brownie. Really cute dog, right? And so basically my dog exists as a dog, but my dog can only exist as a dog because my dog's essence is what makes it exist as that. It's my dog's existence is through my dog's essence, right? And so quiddity just refers to the essence of a thing as it is defined by its nature or form. It is the whatness of a thing. Again, sounds redundant, but it's really important to note of this. And the thing's essence, it is also the oneness of a thing. But it is the way in which a thing has being or exists. It is the source from which a thing's existence flows. So it's just really two ways of looking at it. Quiddity, essence, form, and nature all refer to the same reality. They're just emphasizing different aspects. Okay, moving on. Aquinas tells us that being is primarily said of substance, but said secondarily in accidents. Essence is properly in substances, and only accidents in a certain respect, because essence exists in a primary and true way in substances, but that's only because substances have independent existence. But accidents, they only have an essence in a secondary sense because they are contingent on a subject for their existence. They depend on another thing for their existence. And by that thing, I mean a substance. And Aquinas also says that there are simple and composite substances, but in simple substances, their essence is more eminent and more higher and truer because these substances have a more pure form of existence. So, you might ask, why are simple substances more fundamental than composite substances? This is because simple substances are the causes of composite substances. The first simple substance is God. Remember my video on divine simplicity and I presented a video on the argument from motion, is that because composition necessarily implies a composer, and God does not have composition, and God does not have a composer, because composition implies parts. Parts imply potential because they can be arranged or moved, and so God is the ultimate cause, and therefore He has no composition, and He is pure act. And so here's a hierarchy. God causes all other beings. Pure intellects are simpler than physical beings. Material beings are composite, like humans. But just because simple substances are more prior, that doesn't mean we begin with them. We actually begin with composites, okay? And so some simple substances are hidden to us, so we have to turn our eye to composite substances. We learn more easily when we begin with what is more familiar to us, and composite substances are more intelligible to our senses. That is why St. Thomas Aquinas says we have to move from what is more known to us in order for us to even demonstrate that God exists, and what is more known to us is the effects. And so simple substances are harder to grasp, and therefore we have to start with composite beings and move toward understanding simpler, more abstract ones. And this is the same with Aristotle. Aristotle also says the same thing. We start with what is more easy to the more harder. And that is basically it for the first chapter.